one of the things I did, my husband said, you need to show what you did, is I blew the powder off with canned air. And that helped me get rid of a lot of that. But I want to do some shading, and I'll explain why, and you'll see the highlights and really will make the pieces pop. But to do that, I need to glue my jewelry petals on, my squash blossom petals on, and I want to give them that really shiny jewelry feel. So I'm going to be using triple thick clear glaze, Krylon, Rust-Oleum, any of those that have the triple thick, or just a gloss. So anything that's nice, bright, and shiny you can use on this part. I'm not going to varnish the gourd at this time, and so I'm going to go out. I'm going to do 2 or 3 nice coats on that in a well-ventilated area with my mask, and once we get those, I'm probably going to start gluing those on. While I've got my pieces varnishing and drying outside, I'm going to float some color, and this is really going to make this part of the necklace pop off. We're going to do this one first because we have not varnished anything on here. We've already glued it on, and then we will spray or glue our others on, and then we'll spray varnish the entire gourd. So it will look a little bit different when we're all done. I still have to think about the order of that. That's really been throwing me off because I'm doing it at a different step. If I want my pieces to be brighter than my gourd varnish, you could do, you know, a satin to a flat on the gourd itself and then do those on. We just want to make sure that we're varnished after we float around our petals, but before we do our beads. Now, a lot of people don't like to float, and I like to use a 1/2 inch angle brush. That's not quite a half or 3/4, but I'm going to show you with a 1/2 inch flat brush, just because it's more popular, more people have these, and you can do it with water, but I want to show you how to do it with color float. If you've never done it, this is going to be a lot easier for you. We're going to use a dark brown, like brown iron oxide maple syrup, or dark brown. Any of those are really good. So just a dark brown, any acrylic brand is okay. We just really want to set the piece off. So I'm going to start by cleaning my brush. If you know how to do it with water, then do it that way. That's how I do it normally. But if you've never floated before, some people will call it, refer to as shading or highlighting as well. That's just the paint color you're putting on it. It's really a floating name is what it's called. So we want to take our brush and put it about halfway in after I had applied some of the color float into my brush, and we're going to walk this back and forth until our color goes from full to nothing. So half of that should not be full of color, but it should be open. So we want to take this, and you can practice on a piece of paper or other things and put this onto our gourd. And you'll start to see how that pops out. You may want less, you may want more. You do not want to go back over an area that you've previously done until it is dry, or you pick up the paint. So that's real important to know. And you may decide that you don't think that this needs it. I just thought it would really help stand our squash blossom out. So that is what I usually do this method on quite a few of my gourds, especially if you've ever noticed, or the patterns, I'll do them behind animals or different things like that. I've got some boogers in here that I need to get out. Isn't that fun? I don't want to upset my paint on the base of it. And I want to make sure that this is as dark as that is on the other side. And it really is better if you're familiar with floating and you're okay going in to the color without rinsing your brush. It is easier to rinse your brush and reload each and every time, and it will give you, I need to go to a smaller brush here, smaller. I'll use my smaller angle brush here. I'm gonna get that off real quick, and I'm just gonna float it again because we're going into a smaller area where we have to turn. And then I also want to come up the sides to bring this all together. I also have a video that walks you through it a little bit more in case I didn't explain it well enough. It explains how to do it with water. I'll make sure I put that link, how to float up. How to float paint, acrylic color. But now you can see the shadows and the piece has moved forward. So I'm putting my petals on to place them, and I am using removable glue dots to see how they fit. I want to do 2 rows, and I want to do 3 beads apart on each one of these rows here and kind of play with it. But I've taken my removable glue dots, that is the key, removable, and I've cut them in half. I swear they're like boogers. I know that sounds horrible, but that's the best way I know to describe them. And I'm kind of putting my petal on and then trying to get the booger to stay on my petal without coming off, which is easier said than done. And then I am trying to measure that off evenly on my gourd. Now you probably want to get your little measure out if you were lucky enough to get a Miriam Joy Flexi. That is a good thing to use. If you don't have that, we do have that. The measuring, reusable measuring tape, and I do like this. And if you're curving around and you want to see how far you are, but if you're curving, cut these a little bit and it'll help you round your curve, and then you can continue going. Otherwise you get kind of stuck when you're doing a curve. But you probably want these 3/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch down. I'm kind of looking and seeing what mine looks like. Yeah, it's about 1/4 of an inch. And this first one, it's going to take more beads, but I want to do 2 layers, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that guy yet. But you want these nice and even. And when I get back here, if you wanted to do the whole thing, you could do more, make more, how close you need it, or you could space them further apart. I am going to put beads from here to here, like a back of a necklace would have. If you wanted to really get ambitious, you could put what am I trying to hook back there that you would clip it on with. So think about that. Now I do notice that this guy, I want to watch my height with him. He's a little bit off, but I've glued this guy on, so I may have to just kind of go with that. We'll take a look at that as we're going, but this way you can move them around, you can play with them a little bit, you can kind of see where you want them, and then measure them with your beads. I just tied knot around the end of mine just to hold it on, because I know this one's going to need about 4. That first one, that's about 4 there too. So that's looking good. And just go ahead and kind of get an idea, and then we're going to glue those on with E6000. So I've gone ahead and I've put all of them on, kind of spaced them evenly, have checked them with my beads to make sure that I've got 3 that fit okay across. And if you notice, the petals are not straight up and down, they are at an angle. So the more you would go to the back, if you could continue with these would start to shift over to straight up and down in the middle here. But I think I like the idea of having the beads to kind of break it up and give it that more of that necklace feel. So make sure all of them are measured evenly. I kind of took my tape measure and measured in there to make sure they all looked really good. And then I'm going to start using some E6000 to glue them on. And I might need some painter's tape. I'm not sure yet. I kind of make sure it would come off my gourd okay, or stick on my gourd okay. And if I had to remove it. I also put a white dot right above the middle of each one of these, so I know where to put these on when I come back in, because we're going to be removing our little boogers here. I know I probably should not call them that. And we're going to be applying our E6000. And E6000 is that really good glue that you want when you're gluing stuff, hard stuff to hard stuff. And it's goopier than other glues. I don't know how else to say that. Other glues are kind of thinner and spread easier. This is thicker. My sister always says she can't get it to work, but she just doesn't know the consistency of it. So I'm going to put that guy right next to that one. Now remember, this guy isn't going to fit exactly flat because we didn't make him to go flat on this gourd, and we can kind of move him around and play with him a bit. I don't think he's heavy enough that he's going to slide. I still can get my 4 in there. I do want him over a little bit. Now if you have a little bit of those ones, if you move it, just pick it up and go ahead and move that back a little bit further. I want to make sure I'm at the same angle as all of the rest of them. But this, don't worry about being so perfect. If you happen to be just a little bit off or anything like that, it's okay. So, alright. Now, it's better if you kind of push it and hold it for a little bit if you can. For a few seconds, a minute, or whatever you can do. It'll help hold it in place, because I'm worried about continuing and working on the next one. I'm afraid I'm going to bump this guy. So even if you had it taped, you still could bump it, and you might not see it because it would be underneath the tape. So that's what I have a little bit of concern about, holding that into place. And I may be only to get 3 beads in there. We're going to have to see as we go. And I'm going to go ahead and start my second one. And I also have the keys to these, the glues, to help roll them up when they start to get a little less filled. If you can keep the E6000 lids nice and clean, it's so much easier than trying to clean them later. So I want to make sure I stay at the same angle, the same width from the rim of the gourd, and I want to apply some pressure to that just for a little bit here. I want to make sure that guy looks in line with that guy. This guy's up just a tad. I'm going to bring him down just a little bit. not too much. And I am just going to continue gluing all the way around. Once these have been glued on a while, I would probably do at least half hour to an hour. It's also going to depend on your humidity and all that fun stuff. We're going to go ahead and float color around our petals now. I'm going to use my angle brush because it's a little bit smaller. And I'm going to do like one side at once and then come back and do the other side. If you do it all in one row, it is so much easier to do it that way than to sit there and go and change it all around and just do one at a time. So we're going to do all of the right sides, and I should have gone over to the other side too and have done it starting right about there, because we need to float the top and the bottoms as well. And we're just gonna go around, and then when I get this one, I could have started on this side and done it this way. It doesn't matter. If you wanted to all the way around one and be done with it, you can. And so then when I get done with that, we would flip it over, and then I would come back in and do the other side. It's down here. And then once we get the other side done, we would just walk those two colors together. And what I mean by that is just kind of making sure they all blend together and nothing is kind of out by itself, but we've got that sitting out. So go ahead and float all the way around those, and then we'll talk about varnishing the gourd. So we've got all of our floating done around, or our shading on our petals, and it looks really good. I think I really love how this is turning out. I think this is going to be a fun class and gourd to do. I'm really excited about it. But I wanted to let you know that when I cut my lid, my oval here, it was not quite perfect on one side. Gourds aren't perfect, as we saw when we cut it. So everything is a little bit off, not quite exactly straight, but go with the shape of it, because it does not matter that it is not perfect. Actually, it is more pleasing to the eye when it's a little bit off, not exactly lined up. So don't worry about that. Now the next thing I'm going to come do is I'm going to cover over my stones and the tops of my petals with painter's tape. And the reason I want to do this is I want to varnish the rest of it with matte, which is a flat look. There's no shine to it, so that the petals really stand out. I wish we could kind of do this guy, but I'm not sure how we would do him, or he would kind of shine out unless we come over with a little bit and do it by hand. So that's kind of maybe an option, or taping it off or something like that, but we'll kind of look at that. But I'm going to put 3-4 good coats on, and then we're going to start our beading. I wanted to show you the necklace that I was referring to. This is done out of the conchos, a big one and a small one. And I just really like the look of that. I did use the dark umber instead of black underneath that, and you can see I just hit that with the silver, and then I put a bead on top of that, and then that turned out really nice. So we do have the concho molds at miriamjoy.com, and make a project like that. There's the little earrings. You could also do a bracelet. I just simply put them in with a piece of wire that I had wrapped, but you could also just use some of the ones that are pre-done and just cut it off, and just make sure that you put the clay on the back of that nice and good. And it is really that simple. It is not a hard project to do. So I really like the way the mat looked after. I made sure that I went back and forth in between these to get these really good around our little petals there. But they are all nicely on and a little bit more glossy than the rest of the gourd, which I like. We used to have a product out there that you could use. It made these wonderful eyes. It would be awesome for these stones. It was just real thick and creamy, and they don't let us have it anymore. So obviously there was something that they didn't like in it. So we're going to think about beading these, and I was thinking about working this way, but we probably should work our way from the sides up and around, not so much from the front, but that would be where it wouldn't show the most. And if I started it there, we could bring it up and around. So let's try there. And like I said, I'm going to start, and I'm going to be using a bead reamer. You'll also find these in your clay tools a lot of times. They're smaller than an awl, and they're just nice for doing beadwork. And you can do the hole as you want to. If you're brave enough to drill it and wanted to drill it, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm just going to put it next to where that hole is on our little guy there, and I just want to make sure that I feel him come all the way through. There we go, in the back. So we have our one hole in, and I want one here and here, and I haven't quite figured how that's going to look yet. So I'm going to put this one right next to this guy here. And some of the, I believe David Cook was the bead artist that I love so much. His gourds were just gorgeous. But if you looked at them, they were never pre-drilled, and there were some holes that were even abandoned and didn't get used. So it's a different way of doing it. It may be a little bit harder. You may decide that you want to just use a real small drill or a bit and drill, or your gourd drill, whatever you decide. Now you're going to know why I didn't want this so thick here, because it's going to take a little bit to get that through. And I don't want to put these all in yet until I know that it is going to work. So we're going to use, again, we talked about using our sinew, and again, it's just like a waxy thread, and that's what's really nice about it, because it will stay in a spot that you don't have to worry about it coming undone, and like a piece of thread would. It stays easier, I guess. I don't know how else to quite describe that, but it is nice and strong. I want to tie a really good tail, but I want it longer that I can tie back up to it when I meet up on the other end. You want to make sure you have enough to go all the way around with your beads and some extra, and we'll kind of see how that goes there. You also could take like a seed bead or a little small bead, a spacer even if you wanted to, and just tie that on the end, double knot that in, square knot that in, and then start off of that. Trying to see where my other one is. I can't even find my other one there after all those wraparounds that I had on that. I thought I would for sure be able to see that. Isn't that funny? So, but I really love the color. I like everything about this. I don't even mind the shine that we got from there, because a lot of times the stones are the bright part of it, and that kind of is how it is looking. Let's try one more here, and then I think we'll be ready to go. And you decide how many beads, what kind. I have bigger beads, I have smaller beads, you know, all of that kind of thing. I'm actually going to probably poke my needle through backwards here if I can get it to come through here and find it. It just would go easier than to do that sharp part. And so it's going to be a little bit fun here. That's why it was so important to find out that your handle fit through there. You didn't want anything that you couldn't work in. You wanted to make sure. I can't find the hole. I can see it, but I can't get to it here. This is funny. But this is the things that I go through, the things that I'm thinking, why we're leaving it the way we're leaving it. It's not always perfect or pretty. Okay, so I'm going to be using, these are probably, I believe, 8 millimeters. They're silver. They are not silver plated or silver beads. Those tarnish as real silver does. I do not like to use them for that reason. Unless you're wearing your silver a lot, it will tarnish because of the other products that we have on the gourd. And I either have 3 or 4 in here, and we're going to kind of see what fits. And I just have a spacer between each one of those, and then we're going to go in that hole there. And most squash blossoms have 2 strands of beads around it. That's kind of customary. So that's my thought behind that. I only need 3 of those. I do not need 4 of those in this spot. And you could probably even stick it through just without the needle as well. Again, I'm turning my needle around backwards. I'm just using an embroidery needle. It's a little bit longer and bigger. Okay, so we've got that. I would, I might go back and try the 4 just because we can. There's a little bit of room there, not much. You could use different colored beads, stone beads. No, there's not enough room there. Okay, so now we know. We don't like that. Just hope I have enough room open between my beads and the petals. Okay, so we're gonna do that there, and then I'm gonna come in right here and right here on either side of those, and I may get brave after a while here poking it and start to do my drill instead. Oh, that went much easier. I think a lot of it was the angle and me. You don't want to knock your petal off. Remember, we still got those glued on. Those should really cure for about 24 hours. So, kind of remember that if you happen to still be working on it. And I am all the way through, so I'm going to pull that back out. I think I'm good. And we're going to want to make sure, because I'm not tying this off anywhere, we may in the back, we'll take a look at it and make it tighter. We're going to have to kind of play with that as we go. Just keep our beads kind of nice and tight, how we want to do that. I've had this in the hole twice and it still keeps coming and popping back out there. Okay. And it's okay if you need to sag them a little bit, sway them down kind of in a swag or whatever, that would be okay to do if you needed to fit the beads in there. So I am going to try 3 again. That's how I had measured for it. And I wasn't quite sure how, being my first time doing it kind of this way, how this was going to work. And if you find something that works better, use it. Use it, use it. I want to see if I think that 3 is going to fit in there. That looks good. And remember I talked about that little bit of a swag going down? I actually like that, with a little bit of a droop. So we might have to think about that first one again. But I am getting these pretty close up to the petals. They're not that far off enough to give me room so that my tool doesn't hit them. And we've gone through that back. And I'm going to come up next to that one. Just make sure your fingers are the right place in the back, or that's going to hurt. And I think I'm far enough through on that one. We'll take a look at it in a second here. It is fun to kind of feel for these as you go. Usually you can feel the poke the hole through the back. It should be pretty close to the other one that you did. So we want 3 again. Two spacers. Your spacers just give it that extra added decoration. If you're ever doing necklaces, they just really help break it up, if you've ever noticed. Alright, I'm going to finish these last 2 and then we're going to talk when we jump over here. So I finished all of these on this side. I did break down, don't have the hand strength I used to. I did go get my mini drill and I'm just putting a real small bit on it, just big enough to kind of get that needle through. And we're just going to pop that hole in there as it goes streaming through. And on this part, I'm just going to do a solid line of beads. I don't want to do, I'm just getting the sawdust off, the gourd dust. A solid line. I don't want to put any spacers or anything like that in there. I don't think it should be, because that would be the part that you close the necklace on and it would be real plain. It would not be seen. So we're just going to do plain beads all the way across, and then I'm going to just finishing up on the other side and we'll meet to tie it off. So I have finished all of the beading on the first row. I went back and added 4 here because I have this extra area here, and now that we're kind of swooping them, it looks really good. We don't want it so tight that it bunches. We want to leave it loose enough but tight enough. So I've got that all the way around, and I've got that nice little swag right there, but we need it tight enough that it doesn't run away on us. So I have a longer tail, which I'm really happy we left. But again, we want to make sure that we don't have that too tight, that we bunch it up. And I'm going to do 2 loops, and what that does is hold that in place while you get the second knot in there. So we're going to go ahead and bring that down all the way. And I just want to make sure that all looks good before I secure that. And I think that's, yes, that all looks good. And I had lots of room on my towel. We'll talk about what to do with the inside in a moment, in case you were doing competitions or anything. You don't want this to show. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and just trim that longer for right now and leave that. I'm going to do the second row, and I've got to kind of come in and see how I want to do this second row, because I don't know where, if I come off and do 2 right there or just start picking up with 2 right there. That's kind of what I've been trying to debate with. I'm going to leave my needle unknotted for a minute while I just kind of look and see how I think it would look if I split out of there. I don't think it would look that good. I think we would just go to double on the other side, and I have not put a hole here. I went back and just did all my holes at one time with a real small drill. It was just a little bit more hand pressure than I could handle right now. If you need to do it that way, that's okay, but we talked about how you're able to adjust your holes easier if you're just doing it the other way. So I'm going to come back through this guy and just see. I don't think so, but you never know till you try. So that's always the reasoning behind mine. I always say you don't know till you try. I did try to put some spacers at the end, and they did not lay nice. So they need to have the beads at the end. Let's just take a look and see what we think, and if not, we're going on from the second row. And I don't think so. I think we'll just pick up right under that first one and just do the last row like we did the first one all the way around, and then we're not going to meet up where we started, so we're going to have to tie off separately. We'll not be able to tie back into our end. So let's go ahead and just do that second row like we did our first. So I put this first one in, and this one just doesn't look right to me. So I think I can do 3 from there to there, and we'll see if we want to hand drill this or if we want to do it with the punch, the bead reamer. But I'm going to take this out. You want to be real careful that you don't get your beadwork stuck in your drill. That's one thing you want to kind of be aware of. So that might be something to think about if you're getting ready to drill it. But that's my process of thinking, is saying, okay, that just doesn't look right. It just kind of looks like it ends right there. So I am going to try and get this plugged in here. Alright, got it plugged in. I'm going to go from there to there. The hardest thing for me to do is stabilize my hands. And then one way over here. Okay, now we're going to need it to match on the other side when we come around. And then right up against here like we did on the other side. Trying to find an angle to hold this. And I think we got those pretty close together. Okay, so I'm going to try again with my beads on the first one here. Alright. we've been able to cover up our holes really well. That's one another reason you don't want to make them too large, because we want them to not be seen. And we're going to try one more time here. Hopefully we like this. Otherwise we'll get to figure out how to cover it back up. A lot of great things have come out of mistakes. I think that's good. I like that. And then we're just going to work our way all around. And hopefully I won't have any more changes. I'll do my second loop from there to there. And we should be golden. So I beat it all the way around. Now in this level here, you want to keep it about the same as here. You don't want it too high or too low, just kind of the same. Now we've got to figure out how to tie this off. And I'm probably going to tie on to the one guy that we started with. I think that he is close enough that it will be okay. And I may take that other one and tie off the other side to him that we started with, if that makes sense. If you can kind of see in there, we'll have that knot and that knot. And again, I'm going to do the same thing, double under, so it'll hold in place till we get that second knot in. And we want that tight, but not too tight. We don't want to ruin our swag. But we want that tight enough that nothing is hanging too far down or anything like that, but not tight enough that it's bunching. Okay, I think we are good. So, oh, this is turning out so cute. Can't let my sister see it or my family see it. They'll steal it. Especially my Navajo relatives. They love stuff like this. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and get that first strand and I'm going to tie it to this other one just for double stability. I'm probably also going to put a little dot of E6000 on both of the knots after I'm done, and then I'll trim down the length of the thread. But I wanted to talk to you about how to conceal this if you go to competition. There's a couple of things you can do. You can use the faux leather and just coat over it, which I would a little be worried about with this gourd. But what I would do is Mod Podge paper on the inside, and then that covers up all of your strings so nobody can see your sewing or anything. But if you can see in there, our sewing is real nice and even. You could come back and paint it black, which would even make it show less, which would be a really good idea. There's also black sinew that you could use. So those are a couple of things to think about and do different next time. I am just ecstatic about this. This is one of my new favorites. He always asks me which one's my favorite, and I always say the last one, because that's the one that you pour your heart into last. So those are just some ideas and some thoughts, and work with it, make it your own. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the class. As always, if you ever have a question, please email me at art@miriamjoy.com. We'll be glad to help in any way we can. Thank you so much. God bless.